Leave It to Beaver looked like the perfect American family show. Tidy house, happy faces, and a warm little lesson wrapped up by the end of each episode. People absolutely loved it. The ratings kept climbing, the reruns kept it going, and eventually a movie brought the whole thing back to life for a brand new generation of fans. But underneath all that cheerful sunshine were some real problems that the producers absolutely did not want getting out. There were tough decisions made behind closed doors, serious pressure on the cast members, and scripts that occasionally pushed right up against the line of what was acceptable. One particular episode stirred up genuine trouble and had people whispering nervously in the studio hallways for weeks. Some of those problems got fixed pretty fast. Others stayed secret for years and years. The show always looked squeaky clean on your television screen, but the real story behind it was a whole lot messier than anyone let on. Leave It to Beaver was so much more than just a simple family sitcom. It was genuinely a mirror held up to suburban American life during the late 1950s and into the early 1960s. The whole show centered on young Theodore Cleaver, better known to everyone as Beaver, played by a kid named Jerry Mathers, as he stumbled and bumbled his way through the everyday adventures and occasional disasters of growing up. What made the show connect so deeply with audiences was how real it all felt. Beaver was not some idealized, perfect child who never put a foot wrong. He was curious, a little naive, and he got himself into trouble on a pretty regular basis. That imperfection was actually his greatest quality because it made him completely relatable to kids and parents alike. As the seasons rolled along, you could actually watch him growing up right there on screen. His attitude toward girls went from total disgust to genuine curiosity, and he even developed little crushes on his teachers, Miss Canfield and Miss Landers. Every single episode took on something different, whether it was something happening at school, at home, or around the neighborhood, and somehow each one managed to capture what it genuinely felt like to be a young boy growing up in middle-class, post-war America. Beaver's world felt like every boy's world, and that is exactly why people kept coming back to it decade after decade. Now here is something that most people never knew about how the whole thing got started. Jerry Mathers did not land the role of Beaver the conventional way at all. Most kids showing up for an audition would come in trying their absolute hardest to impress everyone in the room. Mathers did pretty much the complete opposite, and somehow it worked out perfectly for him. He showed up to his audition wearing his Cub Scout uniform because he genuinely had a scout meeting to get to right afterward. When the producers asked him if he was excited about possibly getting the role, he told them flat out that he would honestly rather be at his Cub Scout meeting than sitting there auditioning. Most people would assume that kind of answer would get you thrown out immediately. But producers Joe Connolly and Bob Mosher actually loved it. They saw something in that raw, unfiltered honesty that they just could not ignore or find anywhere else. That natural genuineness, that complete lack of trying to perform for the room, was exactly the quality they needed in the boy who would play Beaver. Mathers had already done some commercials and small movie appearances before this, but Beaver became the role that would define his entire life. The secret to his appeal was never about being polished or rehearsed. It was about being entirely himself. And interestingly enough, fate had found him in the most ordinary of circumstances, during a shopping trip with his mom when he was just 2 years old. Tony Dow's path to becoming Wally Cleaver was just as surprising in its own way, but for completely different reasons. Unlike Mathers, who had at least some background in commercials, Dow had absolutely zero acting experience when he was discovered. None whatsoever. He was actually a trained athlete and a certified lifeguard when somebody noticed him at the pool one day, picked up on his natural confidence and good looks, and the next thing he knew, he was being cast on one of the most popular shows on American television. What made his story even more impressive was that he was also a genuine diving champion who had competed in the Junior Olympics. He was disciplined, driven, and completely used to pushing himself hard to achieve something. That same athlete's mentality transferred directly into his approach to acting, and the transition ended up being remarkably smooth. His natural chemistry with Jerry Mathers made their on-screen brotherly relationship feel completely authentic and believable to every single person watching. But even as the show became a massive hit and both boys became famous, the people running things behind the scenes were very aware of just how damaging sudden fame could be for young kids, and they took a pretty unusual step to protect them. The producers actually told both Jerry Mathers and Tony Dow not to watch the show. Their reasoning was that seeing themselves on television every week might cause them to start developing big egos. Tony Dow recalled it clearly later on, saying the producers, who were also the writers, specifically asked them to stay away from watching themselves on screen. They wanted to keep the boys grounded and humble, and honestly, that approach worked. While the boys were learning how to keep their feet on the ground, Barbara Billingsley, who played their TV mom June Cleaver, was managing a very personal secret of her own on screen. Those elegant pearls she wore in every single scene were not just a fashion choice. They were covering a hollow, spot on her neck that had been left behind by surgery. Even when she was not filming the show, she continued to wear pearls or scarves everywhere she went to keep the scar hidden from public view. And despite all of that, some viewers actually criticized her for what they assumed was an attempt to look overly perfect and put together. They had absolutely no idea there was a real and very personal reason behind her signature look. Then on top of keeping that secret, there was another quiet challenge she navigated on set. As Jerry and Tony grew taller every season, the producers asked her to start wearing high heels on set to maintain that visual impression of a mother standing above her sons. It was a small but deliberate trick to keep the family image intact on screen. Hugh Beaumont, who played the father Ward Cleaver, brought his own fascinating real-life background to the role. Before he ever stepped in front of a camera, he had been an ordained minister who spent his time teaching moral values and guiding people from the pulpit. When he took on the role of Ward Cleaver, he was essentially doing the exact same thing, just through television instead of a church. Every piece of quiet fatherly wisdom that Ward delivered to his sons on screen felt completely genuine because Beaumont had actually spent years living by those same principles in real life. Talking more about those famous pearls and high heels, June Cleaver always looked absolutely flawless on the show. Her outfits were impeccable, her voice was always calm and gentle, and even the way she stood seemed perfectly composed. But the truth behind that picture-perfect image had a pretty funny side to it. June was not wearing heels around the house because she thought it looked sophisticated. She wore them because her TV sons would not stop growing. The producers genuinely did not want the mother of the family to look shorter than Wally and Beaver, so they kept asking Barbara to raise her heels higher as the boys got taller season by season. In the early episodes, she was wearing flat shoes completely comfortably. By the time the show ended in its 6th season, her heels were as high as they had ever been. Picture having to cook, clean, and play the role of a caring housewife for hours of filming every day while standing in heels the entire time. It was all about keeping up the impression that June was always the one in charge, the strong, elegant matriarch standing tall both literally and figuratively over her family. Now, Ward Cleaver on screen was calm, wise, and almost impossibly patient. But the life of the man playing him was a completely different story. Hugh Beaumont ended up in acting honestly just as a way to make a living rather than out of any deep burning passion for the craft. His natural deep voice and composed manner made him ideal for the role, but his personal life away from the cameras was genuinely painful at times. He was living in Minnesota and had to travel back and forth to Los Angeles to film the show. During one of those trips, something devastating happened. His family was on their way to meet him when they were involved in a terrible car accident that took the life of his mother-in-law. The guilt from that tragedy never really left him. He carried the weight of wondering whether taking that job had indirectly led to that loss. And beyond the personal grief, there was professional frustration as well. Just like many of his fellow cast members, he became completely typecast. No matter what role he went after, Hollywood could only ever picture him as Ward Cleaver. He also struggled privately with always being in a supporting position to the younger stars Mathers and Dow. Despite all of that frustration simmering beneath the surface, Beaumont kept it professional on set every single day. And eventually he found a different creative outlet by writing and directing several episodes of the very show that had brought him so much inner conflict. One of the episodes he directed was a particularly sweet one called Family Scrapbook, in which June discovers an old scrapbook while doing her cleaning and the whole family gathers around to look through it and remember their favorite moments together. It was a lovely way to look back at everything the show had been. But the truth behind nearly every episode went beyond just one writer's creativity. According to Jerry Mathers, producer Joe Connolly kept entire notebooks full of stories and moments from his own childhood and from funny or touching things his own kids told him. Those notebooks became the beating heart of Leave It to Beaver. That is why the stories always felt so genuine and recognizable to audiences. They were taken directly from the kinds of things that actually happened to real people in real families. There is also the wonderful story of Eddie Haskell, the character who was originally only supposed to show up for a single episode. Actor Ken Osmond brought such a natural and irresistible energy to the role, with his fake politeness to adults and his sneaky attitude around his peers, that the writers simply could not let him go. He ended up staying for all 6 seasons and became one of the most memorable characters in the show's entire run. One of the things that genuinely set Leave It to Beaver apart from almost every other family show of its era was its perspective. The vast majority of television at that time presented family life through the eyes of the parents. Leave It to Beaver completely flipped that around and told its stories from a child's point of view. The show was built around how kids experience the world, their small mistakes, their big emotions, and their genuine confusion about how adults think. That made it special in a way that was hard to explain but easy to feel. Parents watching it gained a little window into how their own children might be seeing things. Kids watching it saw their own experiences reflected back at them through Beaver. Barbara Billingsley's real life off-camera was genuinely nothing like June Cleaver's. She was not a devoted housewife living comfortably in a perfect suburban home. She was a single mother raising 2 children on her own after losing her husband. Her real life was full of challenges and difficulties that her TV character never once had to deal with. But that experience actually made her performance richer because she brought real understanding and real strength to the role. Her son Glenn once said she was genuinely every bit as nurturing, classy, and lovely as June Cleaver was. Barbara herself admitted that over time the line between herself and her character started to get blurry. She said the writers gradually started writing parts of her actual personality into the character, so after a while it became difficult to completely separate the two. Acting can have that effect on people. It can pull them into living 2 versions of themselves at the same time. Tony Dow's life after the show took a completely unexpected direction. After growing up entirely in the public eye, he eventually stepped back from Hollywood and discovered a deep passion for sculpture. From competitive diver to child star to serious artist, his life kept reinventing itself in ways nobody would have predicted. After Leave It to Beaver wrapped up, Barbara Billingsley encountered the problem that so many actors dread. She had played June Cleaver so convincingly and so completely that nobody in Hollywood could envision her as anything else. Casting directors passed her over for years because they simply could not see past the character. Rather than sitting around waiting for the phone to ring, she packed her bags and went traveling, exploring the world instead. Then in the late 1970s, she started drifting back toward acting, and in 1980 she made a genuinely hilarious and completely unexpected appearance in the comedy film Airplane, where she played a passenger fluent in jive slang. That wamyu Isled and self-aware role reminded everyone that Barbara was so much more than June Cleaver, and it gave her career a whole new burst of life. She also used her real experience as a mother to push the show's writers toward making Beaver and Wally's mistakes feel more grounded and authentic, because she thought the show was sometimes too quick to make June get upset over things that any real mother would have shrugged off without a second thought. Jerry Mathers, after the show ended, was determined to live the most normal life possible. He walked away from show business, joined a band called Beaver and the Trappers, enrolled at UC Berkeley where he studied philosophy and earned his degree, and then went to work as a commercial loan officer. He stayed completely away from Hollywood for over a decade. But during those years away, a bizarre and genuinely upsetting rumor started spreading that he had been killed in Vietnam. The story got so out of hand that his own family received phone calls from people expressing their condolences. The truth was that Mathers had served in the Air Force Reserve and never left American soil. He later joked about a friend waking him up one morning to show him a newspaper that listed his name among soldiers who had died, asking him if he knew he was apparently dead. The confusion came from another soldier with a similar name, but for his mother, who got tearful phone calls from grieving fans, it was anything but funny. He also revealed years later that before joining the Air Force Reserve, he had actually tried to enlist with the Marines. They turned him down because they had a policy against accepting high-profile celebrities after a well-known football player had died in combat. Later in life, Mathers faced a serious health challenge when he was diagnosed with diabetes in the 1990s and gained a significant amount of weight. He committed himself to changing that and joined the Jenny Craig program, successfully losing more than 40 pounds. His transformation was so inspiring that Jenny Craig made him their very first male spokesperson